So I was scouring through my YouTube feed today, and I, not surprisingly, came across a very insightful and thoughtful video from Geoffrey Verity Schofield.
You know, I used to think that the limiting factor when it came to getting results from your training was informational, was educational. That the more data you had at your fingertips, the better your results would be. And I no longer think that's the case. In fact, I think in a lot of instances, a lot of people have too much information. I think they're focusing on the wrong thing. You know what I think you should start with? Not with getting knowledge, but with cultivating passion.
I'm cultivating mass.
And the thing is, when Geoff puts "not talked about" in his title, that's not clickbait. You could take to the bank that that's something that is very important to you that a lot of people either don't know or don't address. Now, this sparked the creative juices because I'm spending a lot of time trying to think of what new content to come up with. I'm on a challenge where I'm trying to see how many days in a row I can put out a video every single day. And it's hard when you think about all of the exercises, sets and reps, all of the programming discussion, how to be relevant, not say something that's painfully obvious or something that I've already done before. So it gets a little tricky, so I'm always looking for new inspiration. So it was a breath of fresh air to see this video, which got me thinking about this other aspect of training, which is not talked about nearly as much, and that is passion. Now, Geoff's whole premise is that passion and cultivating passion is more important than cultivating knowledge and information. And all things being equal, I have to agree with that. And looking back at all the content I've put out, I've touched very lightly on things like motivation and purpose and so on. But that's a discussion that I have largely left alone. So I wanted to respond to his video and give my 2 cents on it.
How many times have you heard that story? I started lifting when I was 12 years old in the basement with concrete weights. I didn't know what I was doing, but I worked really hard. It was something that really mattered to me, and I saw very impressive results.
That was me. I was literally 12 years old. It was 1999 when I first started lifting weights. And I would go into the basement and I would dick around for like 20 minutes until I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing. This is pointless. And then I would leave. But that interest got sparked, and that set off every bit of information that I hoarded after that. Every bit of information of, where to go, who to talk to, how to train, what does training actually look like. And my passion was actually sparked by this book. I ended up picking up a copy I found at a Goodwill just for nostalgia purposes. Body for Life by Bill Phillips. It's made for the masses. This is something that you would see on like Oprah back in the day, but it was made for regular people wanting to get bigger and stronger. And as a fat 12-year-old, it was very appropriate for me. And the thing that sold me about this, the thing that made me excited was this. The book just had entry after entry of before and after pics from regular people. I was so transfixed with them. I would just flip through them for hours, reading the stories, looking at the pictures. They were regular people, and they went from being kind of doughy dad bods to being actually kind of jacked. So that told me it was doable, and that spark of hope is what oriented my brain. That's where the passion clicked, because once I knew that, oh, this can be done, the next step was it must be done. And that's where I was able to justify focusing all of my effort to making it happen. Now, a book like this is largely oriented towards aesthetics and looking better and having less body fat. And I quickly realized that I am more passionate about being strong and eating donuts than I am about having very low body fat. So I just pivoted my training goals accordingly. And that's what you all should do. But on the topic of passion, the reason that passion gets favor over actual knowledge and execution is because passion covers the big rocks. These are the things that are so important, so vital to success, that if you do them right, it actually makes up for a lot of the gaps of not having the best plan or all the knowledge or all the information. The big things about getting stronger and getting in better shape is using your body. So if you are active on a regular basis, meaning you're showing up, if you're putting out a lot of effort, and if you're excited, you're going to be more receptive to information. Think about the things you're not excited about, you're not passionate about. All of you straight A students out there, those of you that force yourself to perform, regardless of whether or not you're actually interested in the task, you know what it's like to be really, really hyper motivated on a project you're invested in versus things you have to check off your list because you need to in order to keep your GPA up. Similarly, my D students out there, you know what it's like to fall asleep during algebra or history class, but you get in like woodshop or something and all of a sudden you light up and you're more engaged. So passion ensures that you show up, it ensures that you put out effort, and it ensures that you retain more information. Now, the thing about passion is that it's something that can be cultivated. I like that he used that word in the beginning and attached that "it's always sunny" meme to it. Because passion, that kind of raw attraction, that very powerful emotion we have to new and exciting things, that is something that has to be cultivated. I think it's really obvious that most people are taught to take for granted the way they feel when they're exposed to something new and exciting is just how they're gonna feel. We do that in relationships. I call back to my marriage a lot because it's one of the things I'm the most proudest. I found somebody who I love and respect, who I have the same values with, we have the same goals, and together the end product is greater than the sum of our parts. And that only happens by doing active work to reinforce our relationship. That's to reinforce our direction, where we're going, but also our sentiment towards each other, our feelings. You have to actively give compliments out of the blue. You have to actively give these little bids to remind the other person that you're there. And when we do it back and forth, there's this like rigidly strong safety net underneath us as a byproduct of that work that we do. And that's something a lot of people don't know, understand, or put into practice with their relationships. And in that same way, you have a relationship with the things that you engage in, your obligations, whether it's your work or whether it's your hobbies. And those relationships have to be maintained. Work has to go into reminding you why you're there, reminding you why you should be excited, reminding you to be grateful, to express gratitude, that this isn't just something you have to do, so woe is me, but it's something that you get to do and you should be excited to do. And oh my God, if I actually apply myself, I might be able to do something really, really good. And at the end of my life, I'll be able to look back and smile that I didn't leave anything on the table and I actually did the most I could. And I ended up with this really beautiful result that served as a role model for future generations. And that's why corporate workspaces dump so much money into like work retreats and team building practices, because as stupid as people find it, it actually does have an element of reinvigorating people towards this mundane task that they have to do day in, day out. Now, this isn't a pass to go out and cut your brake lines and hit the gas and just see what happens. You still have to pay attention. The passion has to go hand in hand with some desire to become more well-versed in this thing that you're trying to get good at. But if the fire isn't there at all, if you don't actually love what you do, you're not going to get the most out of it.
So how do you develop passion? Well, one way would be stories. Every culture, every civilization since the dawn of time has had heroes. Not gods, heroes. You cannot become a god. You cannot relate to a god. A god cannot inspire you. You cannot become Zeus. A hero, on the other hand, is someone who goes on a journey.
Now here Geoff talks about the hero journey, which is really interesting because I've been reading a lot of writing books to try to spice my writing up a little bit so that my future books aren't so dry and like procedural. And you see the hero journey pop up quite a bit. So if you're a fan of Rick and Morty, you've probably heard of Dan Harmon's story circle. It's basically a simplified plot structure tool. It's a representation of the hero's journey where you start out with a hero who has a set of beliefs about the world, and there's this call to action that pulls him out of his comfort zone, sends him into the other side, into the other world where he overcomes challenges and comes out the other side changed, learning that what he wanted maybe wasn't what he needed. And the hero's journey pops up so much because it cuts to the core of who we are and how we think and how we advance through life. We are all the heroes of our own story. We all think we're the good guys. We've been taught that if you're the main character of the story, you're the good guy. We are all the main characters in our own stories, so therefore we are all the good guys. And that's also why we use the term narrative. We build narratives around our stories, how we see things, how we relate to other people. Every aspect of our life involves going out, overcoming an obstacle, and getting something we want. And I think that's very helpful when you are considering passion, because passion, I believe, is connected to purpose. It's the thing that drives you to point B. You have to recognize in that end goal that that is where you need to be, it's where you should be. And in the process of chipping away, in the journey, that's where the magic happens. It's not in actually getting the thing you go after. Being really strong, this end goal of being muscular and strong and so on, it's great. I mean, I like being more muscular now than I was 10 years ago. However, the process of chipping away is actually where all of the benefit comes from. That's where I increased my pain tolerance. That's where I showed that I can commit to hard tasks without giving up or breaking, that I can show up day after day and be reliable, that I can pivot when I run into a problem. I can problem solve, think critically, come up with other ways of doing the same thing. And that is all connected to my passion, my connection to this thing at a fundamental level.
Now, I used to think that someone like Eric Bugenhagen wasn't really providing much value. Like him just sort of throwing around trash cans and tackling dummies and yelling, this was not really providing anything of substance because it wasn't really informational. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe he's actually providing something far more important, getting people to actually show up to the gym.
I really like this comment about Eric Bugenhagen because I am of the same mind. I was really kind of annoyed and bothered by that type of content, even Juji Mufu. And I like John Call. I think he's a good figure. He's very positive. He's a damn good lifter and bodybuilder. But all the flashy acrobatics and all the hype stuff, the performative stuff, I actually thought was detrimental for a long time and didn't really have anything of value. And I'm frequently met with that voice in my head, some ghost of Christmas present or whatever, where I'm being reminded to be less Scroogey, to stop peeing in everybody's Cheerios. That maybe, just maybe, people having fun lifting, doing things that are unconventional, doing things just because they're different or interesting, maybe that is a way of fostering passion, and that is a way of creating excitement. And maybe that actually does have a benefit that trumps whatever you are losing in terms of not following a super structured, super rigid approach to training. So if watching Eric Bugenhagen snort pre-workout and do a Max Jefferson deadlift revs your engine, I mean, I get it. When I was a teenager, I used to record old episodes of World's Strongest Man. I had a whole library of them, and I would watch them on repeat. I would make my friends watch them. That's what would gas me up to go to the gym. I would see how they were built. I would see their mentality. I would see how they pushed themselves when things got really hard and how they separated themselves from the rest of the pack. And that's what would gas me up. So if you need to watch the Bugez, if you need to watch Ronnie Coleman, Yates, or any of these monsters that just go in and slay it, and if that aggression is what does it for you, then by all means have at it. Now the last point that I want to touch on, because I really liked this one, was where he said he thinks you should compare yourself to others.
And it's been said that you shouldn't compare yourself to others. I think you should. I think you should, as long as it comes from the right place and it lifts you up.
And I stood up and I gave a slow clap right in my empty office with nobody else around but my dogs looking at me, wondering what the hell I was doing. This was great because this is something I've heard, and this kind of touches on the problem with like the blind positivity movement. If you take any word and put positivity after it, embody positivity is the big one. People learning to love themselves and people learning to accept who they are. And this is one of those things that's very yin and yang. You need these two contradictory elements to be a complete healthy person, because if you only engage in the blind positivity, then you never work to improve yourself. That's how you get the I woke up like this crowd. No effort into self-maintenance, no effort into making themselves better or making themselves more valuable or desirable to other people, and say, look at me, aren't I beautiful? Aren't I a beautiful expression of the human species? And it's ridiculous because the way I see it, the average human being is just a hairless primate. Most of them are lazy slobs, they don't have great character, and they take more than they give. And that is a standard to be worked against. And by comparing yourself to other people, you can have a sense of different actions and different outcomes. Hey, I worked harder than this other person. I got up earlier. I took this set a little farther. I stayed a little later at work. And as you chart those outcomes, that diverges your path until you get further and further away from everybody else. And that is how you make your name in the world. And then of course, on the other end, that comparison can get toxic and go crazy, and you don't want to have a complex and you don't want to be obsessed over other people. But I really like that point, because being able to make healthy and relevant comparisons to other things and other people in the world is part of being a productive adult, and that's why we're here. Self-improvement is an art form, and for as much shit as the self-improvement space gets for getting kind of weird and toxic and maybe having harmful messages, it doesn't change the fact that self-improvement is necessary, because if you aren't growing, you're dying. So it's in your best interest to figure out how to keep yourself moving forward. And cultivating passion about the most important things in your life is part of that process. Remember, relationships need to be fostered, whether it's with your spouse or whether it's with your gym membership. If you haven't already, go ahead and check out Geoff's channel, because he's got a ton of stuff. And if you haven't subscribed, please help me out and hit that button. Like I said, I'm putting out content every day for as long as I can do that without going crazy, so you don't want to miss anything. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Till next time, this is Bromley. I'll see you.